All right, good morning. You're listening to the Get Busy Living podcast, and I'm Dr. Scott from 6 Sense Acupuncture and the Healthy Habits Club. And we got an awesome guest this morning, the wonderful Trindall from It's Trindall, and that's his business. So thanks very much, Des, for your time this morning, and appreciate you coming on to the podcast.
Thanks, Dr. Scott. I actually appreciate you having me as a guest. I've been a big fan of yours over the last 6-8 months that we've known each other.
Yeah, that's right. And I can't wait to hear the gold nuggets from you, because just listening to what you say each week or each fortnight, and also just talking to you through our Zoom meetings and stuff, you've always got some gold to give. So appreciate that. And I'll start off with the first question. So tell us, Des, what gets you out of bed every morning?
Oh, look, when I wake up, I think it's a privilege at my age to wake up for a start. So that's always a bonus. You sort of get up, and I tend to be a fairly early riser. I spent many years as a thoroughbred racehorse trainer, so we sort of had a 3 a.m. start then. And it's sort of carried on. Even now, I sort of, the sun's up, I'm up, basically. And I guess what motivates me to get up is every day is just another opportunity. And to me, that's a good thing. And not a lot of people get that. There's too many people that, and I know I've seen it with my friends as we get a bit older, going through different health issues and things like that, and losing that quality of life.
Yeah, that's true. And thank you very much for helping the community and giving us the time to to help as many people as possible. So much appreciated.
That's been a privilege and an absolute pleasure, to be honest. The last sort of 8 months since I've transitioned into this from the compliance side, thoroughly enjoying working with business owners. And just seeing the changes within their business and how they are able to amplify the help that they're giving to their clients and their customers. That's been one of the biggest thrills.
Awesome. And so what got you into It's Trindall then? That's my second question. Tell us about that.
Well, look, I'm in my mid-50s now, and over that period of time, I've had a fairly diversified career. I started as a soldier straight out of school in the military, and did my sort of time. I was very fortunate, looking back on it, that we weren't in any sort of active environments like the poor guys are facing these days, with the threats that are going on around the world. So we were a fairly peacetime army. But what it was good for, it did teach me a lot of discipline. And that sort of carried over. When I left the military, I very quickly got picked up by a bank, of all things, with no banking experience or anything like that. But they liked the fact that I'd come out of the army, and that I was trainable and that I could follow process, which in the banking industry is a very big thing. I ended up being a lending manager for quite some time and transitioned into financial services, which ended up transitioning into an accounting practice where I became a partner for many, many years. I've always been a very active athlete. So I've always, from about the age of 12, I've loved cycling as a sport. My early days, I was down on the Central Coast and a very avid fan of bike racing, and got into triathlon at a fairly young age as well. So when I was in the accounting practice, I ended up transitioning to owning some retail stores. And that proved very challenging and gave me a very good insight to what the average business person experiences, because I don't think you truly know if you're advising someone unless you've actually been in the trenches yourself. And having that financial experience from the bank and the accounting experience from the accounting practice, I was able to build my bike shop to a very profitable shop over many years until that was sold off. From there, I followed a passion into the horse industry, which was a completely different thing because I've never had anything to do with horses in my life. I didn't grow up around them. I grew up around cotton and cotton farms. So I had a friend one day, I said their brother was doing some barrier work, and I said, I'd be interested in doing that. I sort of like horses. And they said, oh, you have to be born into that industry. So to me, that was a challenge accepted. You know? Okay, if you have to be born into it, you can't get into it in any other way. I'll figure out a way.
Yeah.
Challenge accepted. We'll go with that one. And so from there, I ended up.
You're changing bloodlines, basically.
Yeah, exactly. From there, I ended up. I thought the best way to get into racing is as expensive as it can be. Get yourself a racehorse. If you ever want to lose money, buy yourself a racehorse, and get involved with the stable that had that horse and the trainer. Get some experience there to the point where I could take my own license out, and I ended up running my own stable in Brisbane here for many years. I didn't have very good quality horses, but what I loved to do was being able to take the horses that, say, running 7 or 8 lengths behind and improving them till they could win at sort of midweek races, whether it be at the Gold Coast or Ipswich or somewhere like that. And we had a little bit of success doing that. So all of that experience sort of led me into working with different businesses on the side as well. I had a lot of friends that are in businesses and a lot of people that you come across, and they would always ask you advice. And the short answer there is the more I did that, the more I realised how much I enjoyed that. And I also enjoyed seeing the results that those clients were getting from that advice I was giving. So that's how I progressed into It's Trindall. It was sort of realising that my true passion was helping businesses, and in particularly small and medium businesses that can tend to be pushed around a bit these days by the big corporates.
No, how could you say that?
No, they would never do that. No, there's no examples of that anywhere in the world, is there? We won't go down that track. We'll probably get banned.
Well, again, I was going to say, so yeah, that's interesting, very interesting background, and I'm going to delve a little bit further. So, so tell us about the military. So, what were you in your teens when you joined?
I was a kid. I remember Corps birthday, which was Vic Barracks in Sydney, and I was the youngest in the Corps, which meant that at the Corps celebrations, I actually cut the cake for the Corps. So, I think I was just under 17 when I went in. And it was funny because I went in a few days before Anzac Day, which obviously was a big thing in the military. And when the recruiters show you all the brochures back then, I don't know how they do it now, but they show you tennis courts and pools and everything like that when you go to basic training, and a bit like a health resort club. When you get there, from the time you get off the bus to the time they put you to bed, all they do is shout at you. And I remember that first night was a lot of hearing up and down in there. I think we had 55, or 50 to 55 in a platoon. So you're all on one floor. I think there was four floors in the building there at Kapooka, which is down in Wagga. And I remember hearing all these, teenagers and early grown men crying themselves to sleep. And the next morning happened to be Anzac Day morning. So we arrived there the day before Anzac Day. And I remember getting yelled at to get out of bed. We're still half asleep. We've wandered out in the hallway. At this stage, we still only had tracksuits. They hadn't finished uniforms. We still had no idea how to march. We didn't know what we were doing. They shoved a cold sausage in your hand and a little thing of rum, which is a great way to start the morning. And Frog marched us out to the parade ground, where the last thing I remember was the flag going up and the flag going down, and then I woke up in hospital. I apparently passed out and fainted. Wow. So that was my introduction to the military.
Wow.
Yeah. But I went through basic training at Kapooka in Wagga. I had a few options. At one point, they said, do you want to go to infantry? And I said, no, because you have to walk. I'd rather go to somewhere like aviation and fly a helicopter. And they said, well, that's not going to happen.
Why is that?
We'll send you to transport and you can drive a truck. How's that sound?
Yeah.
So I ended up going and doing a driver course at Puckapunyal, I think it's in Victoria. Yep, down near that area. And then they sent me across to be what they call a termite, which is a freight handler. So I ended up in Mossman in Sydney, which was a lovely place where I had a unit overlooking the beach on Middle Head in Mossman that was supplied by the military, which was our barracks. And being a field force unit, we were responsible literally twice a year. They resupplied the Inari at the Antarctic and did a few exercises and things like that, and that was really it. So I stayed in there for the 3 years, and that was the end of my term. And then out into the banking world in my early 20s, just turning 20.
Did they offer you another position, or you just...
Yeah, I actually went through while I was there, and I've always sort of tended to look at where you're going to be when you get a bit older. And I went in as a general entrant, so I'd only finished year 10 in high school, straight into the military. And I looked at the guys and I thought, well, my progress from here, it's about 7 years to corporal where I was. And then you've got sergeant, and your furthest you're going to go as a warrant officer. And I thought, look at the warrant officer that they had there. He wasn't sort of a great example of a human being. And being fair to him, he'd probably been through Korea or something like that at some point. And I won't go into some of the PT sessions that he put us through, but they were pretty horrific. And then I looked at, okay, well, an officer, geez, they have a pretty good life. This lieutenant colonel gets driven around in a nice Ford LTD. And we've got to go, and every month we get rostered on to serve them food in the officers' mess and wait on them. I might have gone the wrong route here. So I actually went through and I did at the time it was a sergeant to warrant officer course, or a private to Royal Military Cadre, which was the old RMC at Duntroon at that time, which was down still in Victoria. I passed all that, and I'd come up to my end of term, and they were like, well, are you going to sign on again? And I said, well, am I going to RMC? And they said, well, sign on and we'll let you know. And I was like, I'm not signing on unless I know.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't work that way, apparently. So we ended up, I decided that I wasn't going to spend another 3 or 6 years of my life going down a career path if it wasn't going to be the one I wanted. So,
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I've heard that before. They offer you something and they say, well, I'm not 100% certain it's going to eventuate.
But, I don't think they know either. That's the problem. They're only rungs in a ladder, and there's a lot of rungs in that ladder that are way above them making decisions. So, and like we were always told, you don't ask how high to jump, you just jump. So,
yes. And then you got into banking. So was it one of the big banks?
It was the old Advance Bank in Eagle Street in Brisbane, which was, I think it got bought out by St George at some point.
Right.
Yeah, it was in Eagle Street there. I think number 10 was the head office. But there was I was based in the Maroochydore branch up on the Sunshine Coast, which is a lovely place in the world. And we were kicking off the first part. So when we first kicked off the mobile lending side of things, so we're going back into the early days of starting to use technology. So the old car phones were coming in, and the laptops and things like that. And we were setting up teams to go and work from the different branches. And at that stage, we had approvals, so you could actually sign off like discretions. So the loans weren't as big as they are these days. You're buying houses for under 200 grand up at Budrum and Maroochydore, and 150 grand in Bly. So I think our discretions are about 250, and anything under 250 we could sign off, and then after that it had to go into Eagle Street to the head office.
Right.
But that was a different environment as well, and taught me a lot about reading financial documents and the process, the due diligence process, as far as putting a file together and making sure the order of file and things like that is correct. So,
contracts. That's basically
Contract, yeah, basically, yeah. Which that was another issue because I ended up doing a JP certification there, so I could witness mortgage documents. And looking back on it, I was witnessing the mortgage documents for the bank as the bank. So I don't know how that was meant to work.
Yeah, I won't
If
go
they
there.
ever wanted to, yeah, we won't go there.
I won't go there. And yeah, so then you got out of banking, and then you what did you get
Yeah,
into? Was it horse trading?
yeah, no, I spent many years in financial services and in the financial planning and accounting side.
Oh, that's right, accounting.
So
You got into
yeah,
accounting.
so into an accounting practice, we had a smaller practice at Maroochydore, and I was involved in that practice for a few years. Ended up becoming a partner in that practice. We built the practice up. I think it was less than 20 staff, but it was getting close to 20, I think, staff in that practice. And when I kicked off in that practice, there was literally a receptionist and one other partner. So and we did that by doing something accountants never did, and that was actually going out and talking to the businesses and being proactive. I remember at the time you go and walk around an industrial estate, knock on the door and introduce yourself. Say, hey, we're just up the road here. We're not here to do anything but just introduce ourselves. We're in your local area. And they're like, we've never ever seen an accountant ever do that. It's probably more common these days, but back then it wasn't something that they did. So.
No, I've never had an accountant come to my business. No, never.
Yeah. And that's how we built the practice up. Was literally going and door knocking and then and we specialised in small and medium businesses, which was a great way to do it as well. And they were the people to me that it wasn't just historical. You needed to help them grow, and in order to help them grow, you had to do some planning and some forward planning as well. So.
Did you do any formal training?
Yeah, I ended up doing a master's through New England University externally. So, and then I did a registered tax agent thing and all of that sort of stuff as well during the time. So, yeah, that was a bit more education, which sort of built on from what I did back in the army. Yeah, with the advanced English and maths that they put us through there in the RMC entry courses.
Yeah, so that okay, so you obviously to get a master's degree, you have to do a degree. What was the degree that you?
Oh, it was just a 2-year, 2-year through New England. So I was lucky that I was able to go into that because by then I'd been working for a while in the industry. I'd been registered as a tax agent. I had some time, and I was able to. I could go and do a degree. I think at the time was 4 years, but I did qualify the masters, which was 2 years. Or I could do that. I went, well, I might as well go and do that and get it. It's half the time. It's probably going to be a little harder, which it was, especially considering I hadn't done the other side. But we were already doing the work within the practice. And my partners in the practice, which I had 2 of them, were both CPAs as well. So they were fully accredited, even though I'd come in through the financial services side. I was sort of working under them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. And then you got into the crazy world of horse racing.
Well, I owned a bike shop for 7 years before that.
Did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah, and because my passion had always been cycling and triathlon.
Yeah, cycling. Yeah.
I've done that from a very young age. I've been fortunate enough that I've represented Australia at the World Titles over in Honolulu in 2005. So we're going back quite a while now. I've competed at a handful of Ironman triathlons, and I still train and still enjoy doing those now. I'm just a lot slower these days than I was back then.
Yeah, well, they're doing crazy times now. You were saying that so you would have had to learn about marketing, sales, Because
Absolutely. Well, I sort of knew a lot of that because of what I was doing in the practice anyway, in the accounting practice. So the transition to that wasn't real hard. It was just a matter of the shop that I bought initially was in an outer suburb on the Sunshine Coast. I moved it on to Nicolan Way, which was a bit more high volume in, as far as the traffic concerned, and that was able to increase the store's exposure. And then working on getting key brands in the store that people were going to use. We were one of the first retailers actually to ever sell at the Noosa Tri-Expo. At the Noosa Triathlon, they used to have an expo every year, going back a few years, but they never sold product. They used to just display it. And I went in with a company that we worked with we'd done a trip over to Taiwan, to Taipei, and they developed their own brand, and we worked with them to help develop that brand and build it up as well, by getting a few key professional guys on the brand and winning a few big races, using their brand both in Australia and overseas. So that helped me build the shops up as well. So yes, a lot of marketing, a lot of background in that.
so you could see
Was interesting.
you had the vision that we could.
Yeah, and it was a lifestyle for me too. I would get up in the morning and we'd train. We'd go and do 2 hours before the shop opened.
Yeah.
We had a little coffee shop within the shop, so it was a bit of a social thing too. You'd still get the work done, but the boys would come through and sit around and have a coffee. You do your pool or a run session in the evening after you shut the shop. You'd travel to races and stuff together. I did a lot of work with a gentleman up there that he's still running Sunshine Coast Triathlon Academy, Toby Coote, absolute legend. If anyone on the sunny coast knows him or is involved in triathlon, I'm sure they do. And if they want to get involved, go and see Toby. He still runs a great training spot up that way. And those sort of people help build your business. And Toby's been around for years. He was an ex-pro himself.
Yeah, I have heard of him.
Yeah.
And what happened to that business? Did you expand it?
No, one of those life journeys. I'd been married for 15 years, and I won't go into the financial details behind it. But that marriage unfortunately dissolved, and as partners in that business, we ended up winding that business up as well. I will say it was a very amicable, they never are, separation. And I think I'm hoping it added character to myself, because at the time it hurt a lot.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. But it sort of wound that up, and after that I did a little bit of contract work in some shops, but really had lost the passion for it as far as the retail side goes, and was looking for another challenge, which is where the horses came into it. So.
Yeah, right. And let's talk about that, because I've had a few friends in the horse racing industry, and as a young man, I was just too heavy to ride them.
I've got that.
Just too heavy to ride them, but I've had a few friends over the years that were heavily involved in the racing industry. So tell us about that. It's a crazy world.
It is. It's a world on itself. It has its own language. It has its own community. They tend to be very insular, and rightly so, I guess, because they're up at ungodly hours in the morning.
Yeah,
and it's a 24/7 thing. Everything revolves around the care and the maintenance of that horse. The industry gets a bit of a bad rap sometimes, and the way they say, but I'll tell you, all the trainers that I've known and the trainers that I've been involved in, they will go without food to make sure that horse is right. So that to me was a big part of it as well. I'd come from the athletic side and the cycling and the triathlon side, where I'd seen some abuse, especially in the earlier years, with certain substances. and it was something that I was very much against, and to this day I still am. As I think I've mentioned to you before, I still do contract work in the racing industry, and I do contract work in the sports integrity side as well with athletes. So
I was going to say, which one are you talking about, the triathletes or the horses?
Yeah, well, but I had the privilege the other day of heading to the Queensland State Swimming Championships, where we tested some athletes there post swimming, and one of them broke himself a world record. So that test will validate his world record, which is quite cool for him. And then even last Friday, I had the privilege of testing some horses at the Magic Millions on the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
And that's a big responsibility because, if that test has to validate that horse for them to receive the prize money. So the test has to come back clear before they can receive the prize money. And as you can imagine, those races aren't little, the money we're talking is tens of thousands of dollars, not hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, that's right. The Magic, well, that's what they call it, the Magic Millions.
Yeah, that's right.
And they have the race, the Magic Millions race, so down the Gold Coast. So
that's it. And they only got one of the three done on Friday night because it got too heavy in the weather. And race 3 to 10, or race 4 to 10. So 7 races will be this weekend or this Friday night. Yeah, Friday night, tomorrow.
Yeah, Friday. Yeah, they have. Yeah, they used to have it on the Saturday, and then they changed it. I've been to those yearling sales a couple of times.
Oh yeah, deep wallets.
Unbelievable. Wallets. Yeah, if you get a chance, anyone out there, if you get a chance, then you could.
And those horses, they're just amazing animals. Anyone that's sort of been around horses or knows them, they're a bit of a magnetic type of animal in the way that they'll almost instantly, as far as I'm concerned, they calm me down. I can spend more time with the horse than I can spend with a person and feel way more relaxed around a horse. And from what I've heard, and I don't know whether scientifically it's true, but they say that a horse can pick up your heart rate from 5 meters away. So it can tell how you are. And they also have a magnetic energy around them, which can help you lower your heart rate and stress levels. So, and I guess that's why people get drawn to them.
Yeah, definitely. I've got a friend who trains dogs to reduce the anxiety in people.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a little dog that does that to me every day until he goes and barks at the fence. And then he creates anxiety.
The dogs that I've ever had come in contact, usually they create it. They don't stop it.
Yeah.
So I understand. I get it. I get it.
No, that's it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and like you said, they're up at 3 a.m, and I had a friend who was he was a rider, and he'd be asleep by 7.
Yeah, that's it. And like a trainer will be up with the horses. There's so much work involved with it. And your track rider or your staff, they'll go home and have a sleep. But the trainer then has to deal with nominations, owners, vets, the business itself, all in the background too. Unless they're one of the very big stables where they can put those staffs on. But the majority of trainers out there aren't that. The majority of trainers are sort of not running more than, say 7 to up to 20 horses. So a lot of that does fall back on them. So, and then they might, the end of the day, they've got probably another 2 to 3 hours in the afternoon, if not more. And then they've also got races on top of that. And if it's a night race, like a Saturday night in Toowoomba, they might not be home till 1 a.m.
Yeah, and they're going to be
up the next morning starting it all over again.
Because they've got the other horses to run,
That's it. It just doesn't finish. It's a vicious cycle for them. Anyone that does it, they appreciate the work, and they don't do it for the money. I can tell you that now. They do it for the horses and for the love of the horses.
Yeah. And so then you worked your way into it's Trindall.
Yes.
And so tell us a bit about your business.
So the idea of it's Trindall, it's been set up to work with majority small and medium businesses, and it's to help them integrate systems into their business. So what I wanted to do was to help a business owner take the load off themselves. Um, this day and age, and if we go back and we even look at my early days in the bike shop, we didn't have a lot of things that we could use as far as automation goes. Now we have. We've got things like voice AI, where an AI can answer the phone for you. It can answer questions with your customers or your clients, and it can even send through your booking links and things like that to help them book appointments. Or it can refer them to a human if they ask it. But it's more personal contact. You've got email automation in the background. You've got bots that can sit on the front of websites these days and answer questions and guide people. It's great that we've got all this technology, but one of the things that business owners are finding is because they're so busy within their business doing what they do best, whether that be a plumber or a mechanic or someone like yourself, that is your profession. Where do you find time to set these systems up and do the other side of the fence? And that's where it's Trindall pops in. As we sit down initially, we find out a bit about what your business is, what your business goals are, where you're looking at, what your challenges are, and then we look at ways of giving you back a bit more time so you can work on your business. And that's one of the things I enjoy most, is being able to automate those processes. And it goes back to that Pareto principle, the old 80-20 rule, where as a business owner, and I saw this within my shops as well, is that 80% of your revenue truly does come from that 20% of your customer base. But we're so busy within our businesses. How do we nurture and we give the care and attention and the love that we need to give to those customers? Because they're our fans. They're the ones that they want us to succeed as well, as much as we want them to succeed. Yeah. And that's a big passion and something that does drive me.
So so tell us about, give us an example of how you've helped a business turn around.
We can, and I'm not going to give business names or anything like that, but
No, that's fine.
Let's talk about a business where they were doing. I'm trying to find the right word for it. So almost a survey or a questionnaire with a customer. So that particular business would have a customer inquire to them just with a normal phone call, and sometimes they'd leave a message on their phone and then they'd have to ring them back. And so that automatically created a choke point at first contact with the client. Then the business owner would have to send out a PDF document with the questions for that particular client on it. The client would then have to print out that PDF document, fill it in, scan it, email it back. So one of the things we're able to do there was to set it up where the client can go in, they can get an overview of what the survey is about, what that particular course is or lesson is. Then they will be able to deliver that instead of being a PDF, it can be delivered in a digital format where on their screen they can fill in the questions. Those questions are then automatically emailed back to the business owner, and there's automated emails going on in the background as well. One, letting the business owner know that there's a questionnaire being delivered to them, and two, letting the customer or the client know that that's been received and will be processed in a due amount of time. Just simple things like that can make a difference for a business as far as the time goes and the delivery of the experience.
Yeah, so basically you're making it easier for the customer for their journey, basically.
That's it. And that's what we sort of need to look at, is how can we make, like they say, a confused mind never makes a decision. It never will. And I'm the same. If I go, I'm not going to pick on Subway, but I'll say I hate going to Subway, right? Because I line up and they keep asking me all these questions. And I love Subway. So you know what I do? I go onto the Subway app and I order and I go and pick it up because I don't want the questions, if that makes sense.
You want to make it easy as possible.
That's right. And that's what I'm talking. And that's probably a good analogy here. For anyone that doesn't want to go to Subway and have all these questions, do you want this bread? Do you want that bread? Do you want this? Do you want that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just want a sandwich. Then look at that process and look at it from how can you make the experience better for your customer? And I think that's where a lot of businesses and we had that experience. I came back from the Magic Millions the other night and I ended up with a flat tire on the car. And I haven't had a flat tire for ages. So you pull over to the side of the highway and you go and open the bonnet boot of the car. And I didn't realise the cars these days don't come with spare tyres or jacks. And I blame myself because I didn't check that. But, where you change that normally and it'd be a bit of an inconvenience, now you've got to ring a flatbed tow truck and they take it to the dealership and the dealership take it. Aren't we just complicating things? So my customer experience is now not that good. And in fact, if anyone wants to buy a car, I'll have on sale because I don't want it anymore.
Yeah. Well, Well, and the other thing is, even when they do give you a tyre, it's only temporary. You're only supposed to drive it temporarily.
Well, yeah, the little flat tyres that they put in. So
yeah.
There's probably a whole podcast on the little things like that bug us as we get older.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly right. When my first cars, the first 3 or 4 cars that I had, they all had a spare tire that looked the same as the other tires.
Oh, that's it. My old horse truck, which as you've probably seen, I've been converting into a bit of a camper van motorhome. It's got a spare wheel on it, and I've done many a times, even with a horse in it, I've blown a tire in that. You just get the spare out, you put the new one on, takes 15 minutes, and off you go. So it's a simple process. You drop the other tire into the tire place, and they put another one on for you. So yeah. So I think in business too, we can tend to, and that made that a bad experience with us. And that's what we've got to look at within our businesses is how do we make things a good experience for our customer? How do we make things easy for them to do and a pleasure for them to do? But in the same instance, we've also got to look at it from our businesses. How can we make that so it's not creating more work for us? So can we automate that in the background? Is this a process that we can put in? And is that also scalable for our business? So then how can we scale that within our business? I think that's very important as well. Otherwise, and I've seen it with so many businesses where people will go into business and they'll go into business purely. It could be the boss looked at them the wrong way one day. The boss bought himself a nice car and they're working their butt off and they can't figure out why the boss is getting all the resorts. It could be a number of reasons why people go into business. Maybe they just want to be in business for themselves. And they go in with all this enthusiasm and they're very good. And there's some great books about this. They're very good. And The E-Myth's one of them. And it's a book I do recommend to anyone. They go in as a technician. They're very good at what they do. And that's why the business employed them. So if they're a mechanic, they're a very good mechanic. They're a very good doctor. They're a very good, but they might not be a very good business person. And that's a whole nother lesson that they have to learn. And some of them, they find it very hard to take that transition from being the mechanic to being the boss to running the business, to running a company, and to scaling. And that's where they can reach out to people these days and they can get that advice. And that's what I encourage people to do before they get to that point where they wake up one morning and they're like, I really don't want to go to work today. And you see it, and you would have seen it with your patients. They'll be telling you, I just don't have the motivation to go in today. I know it's my business and that, but I'm just over it.
Yes, we all been through that. Even at uni, I went through that.
Yes.
Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
All right. And
Um,
can you give us another example of how you've helped a business?
yeah. And this is a pretty simple one. Is I spent while I was still doing the horses in the early days of the horses, I actually spent a few years working within a very large agricultural company. And they manufactured a product and imported and exported products based here in Brisbane. Um, but one of the things that they didn't have was a very, very good systems in the background as far as they had 1,200 odd resellers around Australia that they used to send the sales reps out to see. But they never had really good systems for the sales reps or any expectations on what the sales reps. So the sales reps didn't know what their KPIs were. They didn't know how many visits they were meant to do, things like that. There was really no even CRM for them. Right? They were using a very old style CRM, which didn't provide anything for them. There was no real notes, there was no nothing. So in that particular business, I sort of went in as the business manager and just restructured simple things in integrating some systems, like the CRM where it could record the email and the communications. They could also put notes in. For the owner itself, we set it up so, and the owner was an elder gentleman. He used to still love to come into the business every day, and first thing he'd do was he'd turn his computer on. Then he'd have his sales rep come in and say, look, this week I want you to go to Cairns, and when you get to Cairns, I want you to drive up to Mossman, and I want you to see this person in Mossman, and then I want you to go here, and I want you to talk to this person. And that's how he was doing the business. Before the reps went out, they would sit with him and they would take notes, which was good. But whatever happened if he got sick, or if he couldn't be there, or what if he didn't want to be there? There was no system for those people. So we were able to integrate a system in there where it could bring up a map of Australia, and each one of his resellers within that had, like the old traffic stoplights, they were red. So if they hadn't been talked to, spoken to, or seen within 90 days, the old pin maps where you stick a pin on a map, it was like that. There was a map on his computer screen, but that would show as a red pin. If they'd been seen from 30 days to 90 days, or whatever, I can't remember the numbers exactly, it would be amber. And if they'd been seen or spoken to within 30 days, they were green. So in that instance, the owner was able to bring up, it was almost a heat map of his business. And he could see very much the whole picture of Australia, and he had New Zealand and ventured into Canada as well. And he could see all his resellers, and he could go, oh, there's a lot of red there. The rep needs to get in there. Now, the rep would then be able to go in and literally put in a route planner, and it would plan the most efficient route for his week, because he'd fly in on the Monday morning and fly back out on the Friday. They'd be on the road. So he was able to then go, well, this is the most efficient, and it would bring up a list of his clients. And what that did, we saw a massive upturn in revenue just by that. Also saw where the reps now understood, because we're able to say, these are your key performance indicators. So now have the tools, this is how many we wish you to see each week, and things like that. So they knew where they were. He knew where his business was. The customers were getting much better service. They weren't getting missed. They weren't sliding out of the back of the system. Where, someone would turn up and says, Jesus, we haven't seen anyone from you guys for 3 years. Because, they'd forgotten about them. Yeah. They couldn't get forgotten about because they were in the system and they were set up properly. Yeah. But it was the old thing. It's still data in, data out. So.
Yeah. And you can also test and measure that as well, and just understanding where they've been and what they've done. Yeah. So absolutely. That's very important. Very important. It's okay to have the data, but then you've got to be able to test and measure it as well.
That's it.
So we'll move on to the third question. So tell us, who's your ideal client? Who's your ideal avatar?
Ideal avatar is any small to medium business that's feeling some struggles within their business, feeling a little bit overwhelmed by technology. They're seeing a lot of stuff come at them. They're getting a lot of phone calls each week these days saying, hey, we can do SEO, we can do Google this, we can do Google that. And these are requirements that the business needs. But before you start bringing in more leads and things like that, let's make sure you've got the systems to nurture what you already have and to be able to service anyone that coming in. So my perfect avatar would be a business that's, one, they're looking to grow. They want to grow within their business. If we're not moving forward, we're not progressing. Two, that they're looking at implementing some sort of systems within their business because they realise that they need those systems in order to scale and grow.
And I'll go on to the last question. So tell us, what ideas or information would you give us to create lifelong longevity?
Moving. One of the things that I had happen is I'd stopped training while I was personally training and doing any form of exercise apart from walking horses back and forth when I was in the stables because it was so time consuming. Now, from that time, I went from 78 kilos to 104 kilos, which show I'm 5'11". So I put on a whack of weight. It made me sick. It made me mentally sick. It made me physically sick.
Yep.
And I'm not saying go out and do an Ironman, go out and do a triathlon. Just go for a walk. Get out and do something every day. Just a walk, go for a swim, get your feet in the sand down at the beach, earth yourself, things like that. I think to me that's really important. And I think also from a business perspective, take that time to enjoy life. And when you've got the systems and that in place, you know that you can step away because we are not meant to be there. We're living to live. We're not living to work.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you so much, Des, for coming on the Get Busy Living podcast, and much appreciated. We got some gold nuggets from you today and some important information. But if you could please put your details on the platforms, I'll get my VA to send you the links. And sure. You probably have access anyway, so it doesn't matter. And if anyone has any questions, then they can ask you if you give you those details. That'd be appreciated, mate.
Certainly, and thanks for having me as a guest, Dr. Scott. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
All right, thanks very much, everyone. It's been the Get Busy Living podcast with the wonderful Des Trindall from It's Trindall. And you have a great day, guys. Take care. From Dr. Scott from 16 Second Puncher in the Healthy Habits Club.